Hello, welcome to the channel. This is the famous Johnny B, that autistic Christian guy. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about my own personal journey with Asperger's syndrome, or as they call it now, ASD. This isn't exactly going to be a spiritual testimony. I'll talk about my spiritual journey bit more at some future point, but I wanted to talk a bit about my, shall we say, psychological journey, growing up and dealing with, coming to terms with my autistic symptoms in my early and later years. So, let's start at the beginning. Boring. Once upon a time, I was born. So far, so good, and not very auspicious. But fairly early on, my parents noticed that I wasn't quite like other kids. For one thing, I had some minor physical defects. One leg was slightly shorter than the other, and I had scoliosis. That's a crooked spine. Nothing terribly unusual about all that, and my parents were fairly well off and got me to see doctors and so on and so forth, but they also noticed an oddness in my behavior as well. I always seemed to have trouble paying attention. I moved my arms funny. I used to stim in a sort of flapping motion with my elbows bent like that a lot. And I was extremely intelligent. Also a little bit strange. But intelligent as in I was reading all 25 volumes of the Funk and Wagnall's Encyclopedia for Recreation before I was even in kindergarten intelligent. So when I got to first grade, they put me in a special gifted reading class. I was reading at about 5th or 6th grade reading level then. But I still had trouble paying attention in school other than reading. I didn't make too many friends. Kind of stayed off to myself. I had some weird quirks. I liked to wear heavy coats in the middle of summer, which was kind of bizarre. I wasn't growing very fast. I was literally the proverbial 98-pound weakling. So, like I said, my parents were upper middle class, and they got me to a psychologist in Encino, I think it was, who diagnosed me as being hyperactive and gave me some experimental medication. I'm not really sure what it was. Maybe Adderall, maybe Ritalin, I don't know. But back in the 60s, it was experimental, whatever it was. And that, coupled with the medication I was taking for my allergies, basically put me to sleep most of the time and made me really sluggish for the rest. It really screwed me up. But I still managed to pass through all my schoolwork by basically acing every test I ever took. I never did homework. I didn't understand the value of what I deemed to be busy work, since I already understood the subject. So what's the point, was basically my thought. One thing I did love, though, besides English and math, was music. And so, yes, I also became a band geek. My parents were Christians. My mother devoutly so, and we went to a local independent Christian church. And when I was maybe around 12 or so, I accepted Christ for myself, and I was baptized. Unfortunately, shortly after that, my mother passed away, and things got a little more complicated. The one thing it did do was spur me into a deep dive into theology and philosophical study, and that became one of my special interests besides already having, an interest in reading, math, and band. One of the hallmarks of people on the autistic spectrum is they have what are called special interests. They like to focus on certain things, often to the exclusion of all else. Anyway, I'm digressing. In high school, I was still a band geek. I still had trouble with socializing. But it helped being around other geeks in the band area that also had trouble socializing. And I was called the brain by people because I was far more intellectual than most, shall we say. I'm not trying to brag, it's just the way it was. I went to pre-calculus by my junior year, and they ran out of math to give me. So, and I was even on the school state mathlete team. They told me I could go to college and take calculus in my senior year, but the college was a good 15 miles away, and they said, well, we do have this filler class that you can take, something new we're trying out, called computer science. Little did I know that I would find yet another special interest. So sometime in high school, I learned to stop doing the flapping and keeping my hands to my side. Basically what I came to understand later, form of masking, trying to fit in. But I still didn't really understand social reaction, and I still got through my classes on the strength of my test alone. And this latter tendency would turn out to be a disaster for me when I got to college. So college came along. I couldn't decide if I wanted to follow my faith, study for a ministry perhaps, or study computer science. So I decided, this is a typical Aspie thing to do, I decided not to decide. I started taking joint classes at a state college in Orange County and at a Christian college that was right across the street. Unfortunately, they put a whole lot more emphasis on homework and showing up. And I had trouble with keeping a routine and showing up to classes half the time. Wasn't keeping up with the homework and quickly became overwhelmed. And then disaster struck. I fractured one of my knees rather badly. It still gives me problems to this day. And I was forced to pull out of both schools at the end of my first year. From here, I'll condense it some. After a couple of more failed attempts at college, I came home, started living with my parents again, went to the local college, and with my father's support, I started succeeding again. And I even met a girl, and it was her idea. I still had no clues. But then my father passed away and things came crashing down again. This is going to be a regular cycle through my life. My brother asked me to move with him to Washington, where I had a whole new town, a whole new opportunities. I went up there and I started doing well in school again, but after graduating I still had trouble with socializing and struggled in a new environment called the workplace. I did not do well in that sort of environment. In the meantime, remember that girl I told you about? Well, she followed me to Washington. While we were dating, she became a Christian, and we ended up getting married. Then her parents took ill, one after the other, and we moved back to California to take care of her. But my new wife also had her own psychological issues, including social anxiety, and disliked going to church and didn't like me going without her. So that kind of got rid of my general support group, and after a few years together with between her issues and mine not really meshing very well and no longer having the church as a support group to fall back on, I had basically spiraled into a deep depression, and I decided I had to move away for my own sanity's sake. I figured it was either that or I was going to go insane. So we separated for several years. I moved down closer to my job near Los Angeles International Airport. I planned to divorce, which I know is wrong, but things would keep coming up to prevent the divorce from being finalized. In the meantime, I got help for my depression, but I still didn't know why it was so hard for me to do things that other people did normally. Like just go to a party and socialize and get to know people. I would go there, they'd think I was creepy, they would want to beat me up, and I didn't know why. Then somebody told me about something called Asperger's syndrome and said, why don't you check this out? It sounds an awful lot like you. So I researched it and I researched it and I researched it, and I eventually printed out 40 pages worth of my research because that's what I do. And put it on my doctor's desk and said, here, read this. This is me. I didn't get a formal diagnosis, but once I knew what I was dealing with, I started working on the symptoms. I told some of my friends. They helped me with socializing skills as well. And I took martial arts classes to help me with some of my motor control issues. People with autism and Asperger's syndrome tend to be incredibly klutzy, which I am. Eventually, I moved back home with my wife, who shortly afterwards became ill, and I became her full-time caretaker. Things weren't the same between us, but she realized by then that she had mental illnesses and that we had become a codependent couple, and she started getting help. Like I said, we were never the same, but I stayed with her and I took care of her until she passed away about 6 years ago. A few years after that, I was watching some YouTube videos, a couple of them, one by Dr. David Wood and one by Dr. Jordan Peterson, and no, I don't care what you think of them. But they helped me answer some deep philosophical questions that I had, and I found my way back to the Lord after years of struggling and questions. As far as my mental health goes, my current therapist takes my self-diagnosis of having Asperger's syndrome and probably also still some depression and anxiety issues pretty much at face value. I am working on getting an official diagnosis because I've become disabled, and having a diagnosis will help my lawyer get me on SSI disability. From here I have plans for the future. I'm not going to be counted out yet. I want to help others who are neurodivergent. This channel is one of the ways that I'm going to be doing a lot of things going forward. I'm also going to be doing a lot of, hopefully still doing a lot of charity work, like I have been. And there you have it. If you liked this video, please click the like button down below, click the subscribe button, and click the little notification bell to be notified of new content. I've got about a half a dozen more videos already planned, probably now closer to a dozen. And I wouldn't want you to miss out. Plus, I'm told that doing all of those things help my channel move up in the analytics, and that's important. So, because it'll get me seen more, and that'll help me as well. So, clicking subscribe and like and bell helps you, but it also helps me. If you'd like to donate on a regular or one-time basis to help keep this channel going, I would appreciate it. There are also going to be links in the description. And that's about it. See you all next time. God bless and peace.